Well, hello. My name is Lowette. I work as Head of Learning and Development for Axxes, and I'm here today with Mark Rendle, and we're here to talk about programming mistakes. Mark, can you introduce yourself?
So, hi, I am Mark Rendle, and I am a software engineer and speaker, and I do kind of light-hearted, funny talks as closing keynotes and block notes and things, and I am also available for children's parties.
So your talk that you're doing here at GOTO Amsterdam is about programming mistakes.
Programming's greatest mistakes.
Programming's greatest mistakes. Now, I can interpret that title in a number of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Either they could have been mistakes made by programmers, or it could have been mistakes in things like language design, or it could have been stuff that we used software for that we maybe really shouldn't have, right?
Yeah.
So which angle are you attacking the mistakes from?
It's mostly the first one. So it's mostly mistakes that have been made either by programmers or sort of someone involved in the software development process. And for most of them, there's a dollar value attached.
Right.
And then there's also a couple of things where it's kind of, and then people do this when they are programming, or there is a tendency to do this, and that is a mistake as well. And, ending up with a particular programming language, JavaScript. But no, mostly it's just kind of like, so they were doing this and somebody got this wrong and this is what happened and this is how much money that cost.
Right. Because we've all made mistakes, right?
Yes. And I put a couple of mine in there, actually, because I don't want to be kind of going, oh, look at all these idiots. And so actually the first one that I talk about is something very, very stupid that I did once.
What was your own worst mistake, so to speak? I have a couple from myself in mind, but...
So the one that I talk about in the talk, and I probably won't go into it too much here because bad language, but also it's going to be recorded so you can watch it on the GOTO channel, is about a piece of software. Someone said, write this piece of software, and I gave it a name with a very rude word in it. And then somebody accidentally released that to a customer with the rude words still in it. I was just kind of like, that wasn't, but that was just a whole unprofessional kind of thing.
Right, it doesn't strike me as something that has cost the business a lot of money, unless they lost a customer because of it.
The one that I look back on and just kind of still go, was, I think I was 17, very, very early in my career. And we were at a customer's site, and this was in the days of Unix, like pre-Linux, 90, 91. And I had a laptop, when it was just a huge, great thing with the old sort of very slow LCD display and everything. And there was no graphical user interface. It was just, you had multiple consoles and you could switch between the consoles by pressing Alt and F1, F2, F3, F4.
Right, yeah.
And so I had a console open, we had a new version of the software on the laptop, and we had the live customer system, and I was remote shelled when it was just RSH. There was no SSH, it was just RSH. And so I was on the customer's actual production machine.
On one of your 8?
On one of my 8 consoles.
Okay.
And so I had to copy the database file, and this is in the days of CISAM, so it was just a .dbs file, that was it, into the laptop so that we could do testing and make sure that the new version of the software worked with the database. And so I just kind of went, okay, so I need to clear this one out. So rm-rf bn3.dbs. Hang on, what console am I on? Who am I? Oh.
So you dropped the entire database.
So I dropped the production database. This was about 2:00 in the afternoon, which wouldn't normally have been that bad, but they'd hired 4 temps to do data entry. And so they'd had 4 temps doing data entry for 5 hours solid. So they lost 20 hours of people typing in all this data. So that was fun. But yeah, you know.
It reminds me a little bit of where I once worked for a company that made marketing software. And part of it, there was an online component to it that we got from a third-party supplier. It was my responsibility to set that up. And I was setting it up for a new customer. And well, because we had customers all over the world, I took a copy of another customer that was using the same language and a similar color design. It was also his biggest competitor in the region where he was located, right? So I took a copy of the other customer to start my configuration. And part of it was a sync job that had to sync between their on-prem system and the online one. And the default used to be that the welcome emails to my customers didn't go out by default. So what we would do is we would enable the sync and then send out the welcome emails after everything had been set up properly. Our supplier had changed that default and I didn't bother to check with them. So I enabled the sync and the sync had finished by the time that we noticed that the welcome emails had gone out.
It's been going,
in the email template of his biggest competitor with the brand of his biggest competitor in the emails. 60,000 emails.
Oh, yeah, that's bad. That's
so that's my biggest fuck up.
That's worse than mine.
That's worse than mine.
But even that sort of pales into insignificance when you look at some of the things where a programmer at NASA or the European Space Agency or Boeing or whatever, when they make a mistake, or when
there's lives at stake, there's like very expensive equipment that can burn up.
Because the talk is kind of lighthearted and it's just me making jokes and taking the mickey out of people. I specifically don't talk about airplanes or medical equipment or any time that a programming mistake has killed people. But when I was researching the talk, there have been a lot of times when programming, and that I don't think I would want to write software that had the potential to hurt people. So, like guidance systems for autopilot systems for aeroplanes. There was a particular, I think it was a medical scanner, which gave like thousands of people a lethal dose of radiation before they realized it was happening, because it was lethal, but it was kind of in 3 months you're going to develop tumors.
Right.
And so it kept
in 3 months you can put a lot of people through a scanner.
So I don't talk about those because I don't want to depress or upset people.
How about let's take a more lighthearted angle on that. How about we calculate time wasted in lifetimes? So if you do something that wastes a lot of people's time because of a decision that you made in software, that also has a price tag. It's not a dollar amount, but
that could be quite interesting.
I know that Tim Berners-Lee was always regretted the HTTP ://www URL prefix, because it's like it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, because that's the thing about the internet that wastes people's time.
Well, at least just me saying that to you.
Yes.
Is
certainly,
all those little bits all over the world, it adds up.
The HTTP : the www always annoyed me, because for some reason they decided that the letter W was going to have 3 syllables. So it's easier to say
World Wide Web.
It's quicker to say World Wide Web
Yeah.
than it is to say www. No, I would like to know how much time has been lost because Windows decided it was going to reboot itself to update and people hadn't saved their work. Because I think if you added all that up, that's probably hundreds of thousands of hours of time that's been wasted.
Couple of lifetimes at least.
Yeah. But no, the talk, it's kind of this spacecraft blew up and it cost this much, and this building collapsed and it cost this much to fix it. And this hedge fund lost an eye-watering amount of money in 3 hours. Yeah, automatic trading. Yeah. And it's interesting there because this was the error in programming that caused the problem, but you can also have a discussion about whether, like you mentioned earlier, the thing that they are doing, is that a thing that should be done?
Exactly.
Because, these days there are entirely autonomous little algorithms running inside servers, inside the data centers of the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, and so forth, just executing trades milliseconds apart to try and cream off 0.0001% of a cent. Right. Which, because it all adds up over the course of a day, they can do hundreds of millions of dollars of trades. And so those fractions of a percent of a cent all add up to real money.
I don't know if it's an actual thing, but somebody was explaining to me that if you want to go into day trading, one of the things that you can take advantage of is when the algorithms overreact to a certain evolution in the stock price.
Yes.
You can take advantage of that because you know that like all the algorithms are selling right now. So it is for me the time to buy. And when it corrects itself and goes back up, you sell when it goes back up and you make money on that.
Yes. Yeah. Although, I have to come down sort of on the side of the whole trading thing now.
Yeah.
It's gone rotten. So yeah, the very concept of trading, because stock markets was originally a way for people to raise money
for companies and invest in
and
other
build
companies
chips and that sort of thing. And now it's become like autonomous
a virtual thing to make money for people who already have money.
Exactly. And it doesn't contribute anything to society.
No. No.
But
probably not.
And when I talk to people who disagree with me, they just kind of go, well, what does Xbox or Facebook contribute to society? And I have to kind of go, oh, well, certainly Bitcoin, yeah. Bitcoin, there's a version of the slide deck somewhere that just has a single slide that says Bitcoin. The idea was I was just going to do it and then just stand there and not say anything and then just move on to the next one because, that's just a ridiculous
would have been funny
mistake.
though.
Yes, yeah.
But it's one of the things that I have mixed feelings about is not Bitcoin, but like blockchain technology. I think it's a beautiful solution to a problem that
doesn't exist.
That nobody has.
Yeah.
It's like technically and theoretically, it's blockchain and the distributed ledger and all of that. It's like, okay, this is a great solution. And whenever I have seen it applied, my thought has been like, this could have been done so much simpler.
Yes. Yeah. The issue with, you can do a distributed ledger where you don't need millions of GPUs trying to guess a big number.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is then proof of work. I
Yeah.
mean, you can still do proof of stake, and
Yes.
it takes the compute factor out of it.
But proof of stake. I mean, proof of stake is I have enough money to take over this thing. And there was that thing quite recently. A guy gained the system on a particular blockchain that gave him more than 50% of the voting rights. Then voted to give himself all the money. And then I think he borrowed money from people on this thing where you can borrow like cryptocurrency for 5 minutes and then it automatically reverts back to the people. So there is no risk for them to lend you the money. And so he borrowed this enormous amount of money, used it to vote to give himself all the money in this blockchain, and then it reverted back, and he just had all this ether or whatever it was. And then all the other people who have got that sort of in that organization, that's suddenly the point at which they want the FBI or Interpol or whatever to get involved and regulate the unregulated currency, because it turns out when code is law, you can actually do some horrendous things.
It's one of the things that I've always found really suspicious about the whole NFT scene as well, because we're artificially inflating the value of a digital proof of ownership, literally.
Yeah.
And like whatever it's worth is what anybody pays for it. But you can sell an NFT to another account made by yourself.
Yes.
So you'll buy it for 200 euros and you'll sell it to yourself for 75,000 euros.
Yeah, I think they call it washing or something.
Yeah. So that 75K goes from your pocket to your pocket. So you don't really care. But now you have artificially inflated the value, the perceived value of your digital proof of ownership.
Yeah.
And then you'll sell it for cheap, for 30K or whatever.
Yeah. But I
and there is no regulation.
No.
At all.
And I think we've pretty much established at this point that whether the Bored Ape Yacht Club knew it or not, the main reason people were buying and selling pictures of monkeys was that they were laundering drug money.
Probably.
And, so you're not the pioneers of a new era of digital creativity. You're Jason Bateman in Ozark, or Ozark, or wherever that's pronounced. And but no, Bitcoin, that's definitely a mistake. And then I have JavaScript in there.
Sure. I mean, you don't have to preach that to me.
Well, yeah. And the thing with JavaScript, though, I don't think JavaScript itself is a mistake. And what I actually say in the talk is that if you had a time machine and you could go back and fix one thing, and I would go to Netscape 6 months before they told Brendan Ike to create JavaScript, and just, in about 6 months, Mark's going to come and ask you to create a scripting language to put it into the browser.
I build it properly.
So I'm giving you start working on it now and design it properly. Also, they're going to ask you to make it look like Java. Don't stick to Scheme. And just come back and see what the internet looks like.
And that is, I mean, it is a similar story to VHS versus Betamax. You have a technically superior solution, but something becoming ubiquitous in the market basically dictates what everybody is going to use. And JavaScript is a perfect example. We use it for everything, and kind of runs everywhere as well. Mm-hmm. And we even have a song about that, don't we?
We do.
We do. We'll play it tonight at GOTO. But you, as the watcher of the video, you're not going to see that. But it's all in jest, because it's probably one of the most used and most popular programming languages at the moment. And JavaScript is in no way still the language that it was in the beginning as it was released in Netscape.
Absolutely.
It has definitely evolved to be something much more powerful and much more workable.
Yeah.
But some of the remnants are still there, right?
Yes, but I remember, that photo of JavaScript, the definitive guide, and JavaScript, the good parts next to it. Yes. I took that photo and tweeted it back in 2010, 2011, and it went viral. 45,000 likes, and I went from like 100 followers to 1,500 followers overnight. But yes, JavaScript today, there are two good things about it. One, we now have evergreen browsers. And so apart from Safari, there's much less weight from this is the new standard to, and now it works in Edge and Chrome and Firefox and Safari. But so now we can use arrow functions just natively. Yeah. We don't have to worry about running it through Babel or TypeScript or whatever. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that we can actually use and make work. But I think the thing with JavaScript at the moment is the ecosystem around it, particularly front end. Right. So React and Vue and Svelte and Astro and Nuxt and Next and all these different things. And whether each of those individual technologies is good or bad, and whether, React, is that a large download size? Can you use Preact instead? Does Svelte have better performance and a nicer developer experience and all that sort of thing? But
every one of those frameworks has been invented to scratch a particular itch.
Yes.
That its author had.
Yeah.
So I would argue that they all have a reason for being.
React is interesting because they invented it to scratch an itch, found out it didn't actually scratch that itch, and reverted to a different way of doing that thing. But React lives on. But no, it's just the NPM and the number of dot files and .editor config and .tsconfig.json and package.json and eslint.config.json. It's just mad. It's like COBOL. And and the thing is, Angular, of course.
And then the whole left bet thing that happened.
Yeah.
That hasn't been fixed in the entire ecosystem.
No, it hasn't.
It could happen again. If somebody decides to pull their package that is a dependency for a whole bunch of things, and there's probably thousands of packages out there that could break a significant part of the JavaScript ecosystem.
Yep.
And it's all being compiled, it's not being compiled, it's all being pulled in as source from NPM.
Yeah.
So potentially we can have that again.
Yeah. And if you were an immoral person, you could write a really useful, very simple thing, put it on NPM, and then you don't even have to figure out how to do a bad thing yourself. You don't even actually have to commit a crime yourself. You can just give control of that package and that GitHub repo to somebody who does want to do a bad thing. And so you enable them to commit a crime. And then they can use that to install Bitcoin mining or whatever it is they want to do.
Well, yeah,
and there's very little comeback on you for that. This is not a how-to. Do not do that, okay? Please, thank you.
Well, Bitcoin mining is stealing CPU cycles, but JavaScript is often running on
that's what JavaScript does anyway.
Front end, back end. It can sniff authentication tokens. It can get access to database connection strings.
Yeah.
If you have a package like that, like the impact that you can have in certain businesses is way bigger than running some Bitcoin miners.
Yeah. And this is the big thing. And this isn't, to be fair, this is not just a JavaScript thing. This is a pip Python thing. This is a Gradle Maven thing. It's a NuGet thing. It's a cargo thing, even Rust with all its guarantees. So it's definitely, it's the problem.
Are you arguing that package managers are a big mistake in the programming world as well?
Yeah. I have this sort of thought that landed in my head one day, and it's never really gone away. As a society, as a world, there is an enormous amount of time and energy and money that goes into things that we wouldn't have to do if people were just fundamentally honest. You know, if everybody just went, this is my Gmail account, and all I should have to tell the computer when I want to log into my Gmail, hi, it's me. And it shouldn't need a password because other people shouldn't want to read my Gmail. And I shouldn't need to keep iterating on things. And we shouldn't need TLS and SSL and HTTPS and all these sorts of things. We're spending vast quantities of energy.
You were talking about
and
stock exchanges a while ago, right? So, I mean, that dishonesty, well, I wouldn't say that stock trading is dishonest, but like this trying to get ahead by exploiting whatever people can in the system is something that is probably rooted into human nature. And,
you know, sometimes it is dishonest. The 2008 thing, the Big Short and the mortgage crisis and everything, that was dishonest. Fundamentally dishonest. If you take the bottom 5% of 20 things and then put it together in one, that's just now 100% bad things. But then you can still say, oh, this is the top 5%. Yes, but it was the bottom 5. Yes, so yeah. But yeah, you know, the amount of programming time and effort and energy that's gone into just stopping people from being dicks or lulls. And
people learned the Dutch word for dick yesterday evening while we were throwing darts, because my nickname became lul on the darts system.
But yeah, it just occurred to me, how much further along would we be as a species if all the smart people who've had to spend their time
could focus on
fighting human nature had just been able to go, actually, what can I do to make the world a better place? So yeah, basically, if you've ever done anything bad or told a lie or just anything, if you are not completely innocent and virtuous, then you've killed us all. And I hope you're pleased with yourself.
Wow, that took a turn for the...
Yeah, I should do a whole talk.
Now there's other mistakes that we haven't really talked about, but you also have a really nice talk about those mistakes. It's mistakes in programming language design that make the job of the programmer, let's say, less enjoyable.
Yes, the worst programming language ever.
Yes.
My most successful talk ever. I think added up, it's had like 5 million views total on YouTube in various forms or something.
That's very nice.
It is. It's insane. And
it's also, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It's a hilarious talk. It really is.
I'm very, very proud of that talk. And people think it's going to be me. People think it's going to be me deciding which is the worst programming language ever, which it isn't. It is start with a programming language that I don't like. It's a lot better than it used to be, but I still don't like it. But then progressively make it worse by adding just the weirdest, worst features of other programming languages.
I mean, one that you made up, but that I really liked because of how evil it is the prime numbered line numbers that needed to be in...
Yes, sequential primes.
Yeah, sequential primes. And as soon as you want to add a line somewhere...
Yes.
So that was particularly evil. But you also pulled stuff from other programming languages, stuff that has already been done, but that was horrible.
Yeah. So like unless from Ruby, which just just throw an exception unless something isn't false. And you're just kind of like, that's the wrong way around. And actually, there's a linguist, I can't remember his name, but said unless is responsible for so much stress. Because you say bad thing unless condition. So there's that.
So you're pleading here that we should all be going, if this isn't true, then
if a bad thing has happened, then raise an exception, not raise an exception unless a bad thing hasn't happened. That's just the wrong way around. But no, it takes date formatting from Go, which I only learned about quite recently, and I won't spoil it for you, but Go's date formatting is just weird. It's weird. It's quite fun finding out sort of where various, so it takes eval from fourth, I believe, is where that came from. Macros, which it sort of takes from C and C++, but then it kind of goes, but to make macros properly powerful, we should do them as regular expressions. And the idea of having the compiler just run a bunch of regular expressions over your code as part of the build process just tickled me. But the really nice thing is I've done the talk a few times, and I always leave 10 minutes at the end and open it up to the room because, I've used quite a lot of programming languages over the last 30 years, but people have used stuff I haven't used. And so I'm kind of like, so what would you suggest from programming languages that you use? And you get people who've used, there's a language that was used for building healthcare software, and it was called mumps. And one of the features of mumps was that you could shorten any keyword to the minimum amount of letters before it became unique. And so, of course, because you could do that, everybody did do that. So mumps code is unreadable.
So instead of while, you could maybe get away with WH.
Yes, exactly.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. And so that's fun. And then now they go on YouTube and they go viral every now and then, and I suddenly start getting emails and things. And the YouTube comments is just people going, oh, you think that's bad, you should try this. And it's literally thousands of comments.
So that's how you wrote part of that talk?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of pick things out that I really like and I iterate on the talk and I add stuff into it. And but no, it's great fun. And I don't think it's mean. People worry that it's mean. And it's kind of like, no, you just...
It's
if
a good
it
laugh.
picked on one language, then it would be me. But saying, I don't like that feature of that language and explaining why.
There's a lot of mistakes in programming language design that were meant really well that have caused us all a lot of pain.
Null,
for instance. Yes, like null is not a good way to represent nothingness.
No.
Because it can mean a whole bunch of different things, right?
Yeah. And then you get JavaScript, which picks up null and just runs with it because undefined, which is not the same as null. Because if it's null, that means somebody set it to null. If it's undefined, then nobody set it to anything. It's like a 3-state Boolean or something.
I would argue that those are indeed two very different things. It's
yes.
like I have set this to be nothing, or nobody has set it to anything. They're totally different.
Yeah.
And the cleanest solution, in my opinion, to this is you can see it in a bunch of functional languages where you have discriminated unions, where you can say, like, if I have a person, it could be that it is no person.
Yes.
And you can define that as part of a union where you have even different types of classes that can still be approached as one concept, which is something that we still don't have in C#, for instance.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that would make steering away from null as the catch-all concept for nothing would make it a whole lot more bearable.
Yes. Yeah. Option or maybe or whatever, and being unable to or you can still it's like Rust has its result, and you can call .unwrap, which basically says, just get me the result out, and if it's not there and an error has occurred, then just dump the process and exit out. So you can always do that, and not having null doesn't mean you can't do that, and having null, C# is now very good throwing up warnings going, that could be null where you're doing that. And so you can at least put some guards around it. And
but they're in the limbo where it is a compiler feature and it's not baked into the runtime yet, right? So you see all the things in your IDE and it's giving you very, very nice warnings. And I think that the evolution to be more strict about all of this wildwood programming is a good idea.
Yeah.
But we could do with a few more features to make it better so that we have viable alternatives.
Yes. Yeah. I sometimes wonder if it's time for kind of C# next. So, and .NET next. Drop a bunch of the stuff. I think they actually tried to do it with .NET Core.
I have to say that the language changes from, let's say, Core 1, 2016, last 7 years, right? The language has evolved tremendously.
Yeah.
And I would say for the better. We now have almost effortless immutability for objects, which is great, which is something that makes programming against immutable classes so much easier. And it makes it easier to also achieve things like idempotency and so on. Because if it's like, I'm never gonna change the contents of this object anymore, like why not enforce it? But there's a whole bunch of innovations coming from the functional ways of thinking, making their way into C#, which makes it a very, very usable language. But I don't think we're there yet.
No. There's a bunch of stuff coming in .NET 8 with frozen dictionaries, frozen hash sets, frozen arrays. That's quite cool. Like you say, discriminated unions would be lovely. Structural typing on interfaces. So you don't say it has to implement dictionary of string object. You can just say it needs a string indexer that returns an object. Yeah. And then the compiler goes, yes, this does have that. And that sort of thing. Shapes, I think they call it.
Yeah.
COM, funnily enough, had something like that. When you do COM programming, you see there's kind of I things, but there's also S things, which is sort of coercing it at runtime and saying it will have this method. If it doesn't, then blue screen. But yes, so I think
that's something we still have, is we can define an interface, but unless the actual class implements that interface,
the class
you cannot just make a class that has those members, or you cannot define an interface that maps to a members of a class that was written by somebody else and then use that interface.
Yeah. And you just think, because C#'s 23 years old now. And so you kind of go, right, so I have this thing that I think would be beneficial for a lot of software projects, which is build it as fast as you can, as slapdash as you can, and then build it again from scratch and take everything you learned building it the first time, but now write it out as clean code effectively. Don't copy and paste anything. Build it in 3 months and then build it again in a month, but just do it right. And I think we would end up with much better, more maintainable code bases.
I argue that could be a practice for a lot of enterprises as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
If I would get the authority, I've had this with one customer once, where we would have a deal. We were building everything as vertical slices, and we had the ability to ship a feature quick and dirty, but it had an expiration date.
Yes.
So if 4 weeks from now you still want to keep this as a business, you're going to have to invest 10 times the amount of time to write it properly. But in the meanwhile, we can ship quick and dirty and you can be very responsive.
Yeah.
And the moment that model failed was like, most of the time those features are okay, we're going to want to keep them from now. And it's like, no, we can no longer do this.
Yes.
Because we're effectively shipping crap to production.
Shipping crap.
But the advantage of that system is if you can do it quick and dirty 1/10 of the time, for the price of 2 features, you can try 10 and keep 1.
Yes.
And if you're in a fast-moving industry, that is tremendously valuable. And it surprises me that not a lot of teams are actually doing that in the world.
I think the problem is that from an enterprise point of view, from a cost center point of view, it's nice, clean, maintainable code doesn't have recognizable business value.
No.
It's kind of, well, you've done it. It's working. Why am I going to pay you to do it again? And then you go, so it's still working in 10 years' time.
Or so we can keep maintaining it or whatever.
Yeah,
and
but
that's,
the CFO
that's mainly
honestly
us.
doesn't care about 10 years' time because he's probably going to have moved on by then.
But that's mainly us failing to communicate the true cost of technical debt to business people.
Yeah. But it is also, I mean, sometimes it's us, just don't tell them it's finished. just build it. Don't tell them you've done
that right.
It's kind of, I worked at one place where we weren't supposed to write automated tests, so we wrote them and didn't tell people.
Right.
And and then went, oh no, those aren't automated. We have to run them manually. But yes, so no. I think if I wanted to spend the next 20 years of my career doing talks about programming mistakes,
there's enough of them.
Pretty sure I'm never going to run out of material, put it that way. So maybe I will. That'd be fun.
Thanks so much for joining me here today. Is there like a key takeaway that you want people to have? A mistake you would like to save them from by giving them a bit of advice?
I would say the primary mistake that just kept popping up over and over again was just not sufficient testing. People build things and they go, oh, it's impossible to do testing on that. And you're kind of like, no, it's not. You just need to apply yourself and figure out how. Don't assume that something is incredibly simple and it will just work. Just test. That's probably the biggest takeaway. The people who can sort of go, well, testing is difficult is the people who are sending robots to Mars. Because it's very difficult to test whether a robot is going to work on Mars. They do the best they can.
No.
And so if we do the best we can to do proper testing, then we can probably
avoid the opening
a lot
keynote yesterday.
Yes.
Somebody who did the landing mechanism for
I know, and then went to build hydrogen-based airplanes, which is just
amazing.
I love the way, can you build the landing system for the next Mars rover? No, I've done that. Bored. Yes.
I have a feeling that you can relate to that sentiment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the ADHD is strong with this one.
And I love the fact that she went, well, I'm going to apply myself to try and improve the emissions in the airline industry.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start doing that. And nobody's ever done it before, but I'm going to make it work.
So if that talk's available online, you should watch that one as well.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Anita, we really hope that you succeed.
Yes, please. Okay, cool. Thank you.